Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with German jazz musician Naoki Kenji. We caught up with him about his 8th album, 2017's Akatombo, inspired by a poem created years ago by his mother. He is half German and half Japanese and spent his early years in Tokyo and Osaka. By 5, he was already taking classical piano lessons, and at 18, he left school without his parents' consent to dedicate himself to his dream of music. He spoke to us candidly from his home in Germany, so please get to know him and dig this interview, my friends. Let me go ahead and talk about your latest album after 6 years of silence, it said. Your 8th album, Akatombo, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
This is a great album. There's a real good mix of almost an acid jazz feel, a modern feel. You got jazz. You got a lot of action. I'm really glad you sent this over. I really dig it. Talk to me about this album.
Well, the thing is, I don't know if you are familiar with the previous albums I did, which actually started more in the electronic area, but somehow I believe that every artist is doing a kind of, development through the years. I think that same happened also to me, that, you've been trying several styles and tried to mix things specially. And I think the challenging thing about electronic music, for me personally, is just to try to mix certain flavors together. Rather, if it's jazz, but also could be, world percussions and other influences. And I think that makes the thing very interesting. And the reason, because you've mentioned those 6 years, it's been indeed a quite long time where I didn't release any album. And I think the main reason for me personally was, I've been doing that for a quite long time. I've learned it really the old school, and it was very frustrating for myself to see how the music industry has changed, especially in the past years. And I was quite, when 2011, the last album came out, I was a little bit, frustrated how things work. And I didn't have this passion for a while to continue. But somehow I believe that the artist in you is way stronger than the circumstances around you. And don't get me wrong, it's not that I say that the new way how music is being transported via social media, via download, etc., is worse, or it's just different. But I think for someone like me who started that the very classical way, it just took a certain time to get used to it, basically.
Absolutely. And the one thing I did notice, this was inspired, this album, by a poem created by your mother.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, the thing is, my mother has passed away 3.5 years. And my mother is Japanese, my father is German. And my mother was also a little bit into art. She was very good in doing poems in Japanese. And what I did actually, and that was an album which I've released with the US company Water Music in Los Angeles, Universal Music, that was back in 2001. My mom created certain poems, and I took her to the studio and put her in front of the microphone and said, "Oh, let's go, let's record." And she did numerous numbers of different poems. I didn't use all of them. And I have moved to a different place 1.5, 2 years ago. And I found those big stack of CDs, those CDRs, which were actually untitled. I didn't have made any note on it, whatever was in there. And before I put them on the trash, I listened to all, and then I certainly found those recordings back there. And there was, on the one hand, a very sad moment, because you obviously remember that she's not there anymore. But on the other hand, a pure inspiration. And so, because this album was also dedicated to her, she always supported me in those things. And I found this wonderful poem about autumn, and especially about Akatombo, which is a dragonfly. And she wrote this wonderful poem, and I thought it would be very nice to include that in a track in there. And so, what was also very interesting, as the poem's name is Akatombo, most time I'm always struggling with track titles or with album titles, but that came just, certainly in a minute that I immediately know, okay, this album I'm going to call Akatombo. So that's the background story, actually. So yeah, by coincidence, if you will. So
Beautiful. So you started out playing piano at the age of 5 and moved on
yes.
from there at the age of 13 to a boarding school in Germany. And, by 18, you left school and wanted to pursue your dream. You've been at it for a while. Your first album was in '99. How do you feel about your career?
Well, first of all, I think I'm very grateful that my parents, in those times I used to live 13 years in Japan, and I don't know why it is, but it seems like in very lot of Japanese households you find a piano, and so it was with us, and my parents did send me to classical lessons, and which was wonderful. And when I came to Germany, as you correctly have mentioned, I joined the school band, etc. And I'm very grateful that I'm able to do a living out of it. I think, especially nowadays, it's very difficult and very hard to do. And so I have to thank, obviously, my parents, that they always have supported me in that respect. And even when I started with the young age of 18, where at this age I was not able to live on music. I was playing in bands, and I did cover music, all kind of things to survive. But my parents supported me the first years, by giving me a little money aside, and was able to pay my rent and buy some food, etc. So yeah, that was absolutely wonderful.
So let me ask you this, to get kind of to the essence of who you are. Everyone has a version of you, your family, your friends, and your fans. But who are you? Who do you think you are?
I mean, if you break it down to nation, well, I'm half Japanese, half German. A lot of people ask me, do I feel more Japanese or do I feel more German? I think rather neither way. Rather, I don't feel really German. Probably I feel more like a world citizen, if you will so. But who I am, that's a very good question. I really don't know what to answer, to be really honest. Who am I? Probably I'm the wrong person to ask. Probably I should get my dad here. He probably could give you a more qualified answer than I could do. If you create music, in my case, that always of your own inside, maybe a little bit.
Yeah,
so
your essence. Yeah.
Quite hard to answer this question, to be really honest.
Sure.
It's because it's not so easy to judge about yourself, to characterize. Probably is that what you're asking me, right?
Yeah, but every answer is the right answer. It's a hard answer to get at by yourself. Sometimes some people really do know who they are and want to get to it, and others would rather others kind of characterize them instead of themselves. So that's a great answer. It's totally spot on.
Okay.
I saved the hardest one for last. I really wanted to wrap everything up with that, but you gave me a great overview of your album and your music. I really am looking forward to profiling it on Neon Jazz. So thank you for reaching out. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. I have to thank you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Germany, Japan, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Naoki for his time and his music. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.